number 10, flying in a window. If you've ever given up the window seat for your toddler when you fly together, fear not. One day, everyone will have a window seat, as Technicon Design in France and UK's Centre for Process Innovation wants to offer a panoramic view of the sky. But don't worry, the plane won't be entirely made of glass. It will merely be a convincing simulation created by cameras placed on the outside of the plane. The hope is that passengers will feel as though they are walking on air, and it will also make planes lighter. I can't imagine this would be a very pleasant experience for anyone who is terrified of heights, but for all window seat lovers like me, this would certainly be a breath of fresh air for those long flights.
In our number 9 spot today, we have Harold Holt. Harold was the 17th Prime Minister of Australia until his presumed death in 1967. In December of that year, Harold was with 4 other people when he convinced everyone to stop at Cheviot Beach for a swim. The weather conditions were pretty rough, so only one other person actually went into the water with him. Holt said he knew the beach like the back of his hand, but sadly he was taken by the sea when going for a swim. Despite the subsequent investigation that ensued, which involved the biggest search operation in Australian history, no body has ever been found. The disappearance has been the source of mystery since the day it happened, with many conspiracy theories being created around it. Some believed he faked his own death, while others believe he was killed by the CIA, and of course there are people who believe that it was simply just a case of getting caught in a riptide. Whatever truly happened here may be a mystery, but it is also an extreme tragedy. In our number 8 spot today, we have Jelly Rain. Back in 1994, residents of Oakville, which is a small city in Washington, reported a series of mysterious translucent gelatinous blobs covering the ground. From the first report, over the next 3 weeks, more discoveries of this strange substance began to roll in, with many people claiming that they had fallen ill as a result of coming into contact with it. Many people believed that this substance had actually come down from the skies like rain, as each of the blobs was about the size of a grain of rice, and they were strewn about the ground just as rain would be. There are of course tons of theories as to what this substance could be, and that includes the fallout from some sort of military weapons test, but to this day nothing has ever been confirmed, and it remains just as much of a mystery as it was 27 years ago. In our number 7 spot today, we have DerekAmato. One day in 2006, DerekAmato was having a fun day at the pool with friends before a life-changing moment occurred. Derek yelled for his buddy to pass him the football as he dove into the pool, but just one moment later, Derek had found his head hitting the concrete floor of the pool so hard that he gave himself an extremely severe concussion. The injury caused him to lose 35% of his hearing in one ear and left him with headaches and memory loss, but also a newfound ability. Just 4 days after the accident, Derek found himself somewhere he had never seen himself, in front of a piano. Despite never having played before, Derek found his hands gliding across the keyboard like he was a seasoned professional. He said, quote, "As I shut my eyes, I found these black and white structures moving from left to right, which in fact would represent in my mind a fluid and continuous stream of musical notation." While Derek has had to suffer through a multitude of side effects from his injury, he continues to say that he believes he was given a gift. This is truly an interesting story, but no one can quite figure out exactly how this happened. Derek isn't the only person with a story like this, and all are as equally amazing as they are perplexing. In our number 6 spot today, we have the WOW signal. In August of 1977, there was a radio telescope at Ohio State University that detected a strange signal. The radio picked up a pulse of radiation that was super unusual and that was coming from somewhere by the constellation of Sagittarius. The signal lasted for 37 seconds, and it has been commonly referred to as the WOW signal because of the fact that the astronomers observing it were so shocked at the time that they wrote "wow" on the printout from the telescope. This signal was so shocking because it was in a band of radio frequencies that are internationally banned on Earth. There are a multitude of natural sources for radiation in space that would cover a multitude of frequencies, so there are scientists who are skeptical that this could be proof of alien life, but skepticism doesn't mean it should be ruled out. Maybe this signal came from a huge astronomical event, or perhaps intelligent alien life with a very powerful transmitter who are trying to contact us. At the end of the day, this signal was detected in 1977, and we still don't know exactly where it's coming from or why it exists, so who's to say for sure? In our number 5 spot today, we have the Mothman. Back on a dark November night in 1966, 4 young people, 2 couples, claimed that they saw a tall bird-like monster that had glowing red eyes. They claimed they saw it while they were cruising down a back road near Point Pleasant, which sits in rural West Virginia. They explained that whatever this creature was, it rose into the air, unfolded these huge bat-like wings, and chased them as they sped away as fast as they could, totally frightened by what they had just seen. From here, stories of the Mothman continued to spread, with more sightings coming in the following weeks. This story, of course, is what inspired the 2002 movie The Mothman Prophecies, which was based off of John Keel's book that told the stories of these uncanny sightings and experiences in relation to this mysterious creature or being. This is because he believes that this creature was somehow mysteriously linked to the collapse of the Silver Bridge in Point Pleasant in December of 1967. This bridge collapse took the lives of 46 people, and that included some of those who had said that they had an experience with the Mothman. Some people believe the story, others think it's just folklore and gullible people, so here I am asking, what do you think? In our number 4 spot today, we have the Mary Celeste. Okay, I'll admit, this one's out of our lifetime, but I mean, the Mary Celeste, it's a classic mystery. The Mary Celeste first set sail on November 7th, 1872 with a cargo full of alcohol. What happened over the next month isn't quite clear, but what we do know is that on the afternoon of December 5th of the same year, another ship on the Atlantic crossing found her drifting somewhere between Azores and Portugal. The captain of this ship knew the captain of the Mary Celeste and knew that he was a skilled and capable sailor, so he was extremely suspicious. He ordered a crew to board the Mary Celeste, and when they did, they found that the ship had been deserted, but it was in full seaworthy condition, so why had they abandoned it? Especially the captain. The captain of the ship that found this derelict split his crew and sailed the Mary Celeste to Gibraltar for more investigations, but despite this, the captain, his family, and the crew of 7 that were on board the Mary Celeste simply just disappeared, and no one knows what happened or where they could have gone. I think this one is so famous because it has no answers tied to it at all. Like, it really is just one of those mysteries with next to nothing to go off of in terms of clues. In our number 3 spot today, we have alien visitation. Charles Hickson and Calvin Parker are 2 men who are from Mississippi, and back in 1973, while fishing, the pair swear that they were abducted by aliens. They say that they heard strange sounds and saw weird lights above their heads. When they looked up, they saw an oval-shaped object that they say was about 40 feet across and 10 feet high. The pair explained that during this abduction they were fully conscious, but they were unable to move. It isn't exactly clear what they entailed, but the men say that the extraterrestrials conducted experiments on them before releasing them. Of course, many people said that the men were lying, but both of them passed a polygraph test. Polygraphs aren't the most accurate tool in the world, but the chance of both of them passing is a lot slimmer than if it was just one person. This has led some people to suggest that perhaps they experienced some sort of combined dream, but even if that is the case, how that could have happened is still very much a mystery. Who knows if they actually experienced something or not, and if they did, what exactly it was. In our number 2 spot today, we have Ouma Mula. So a few years ago, scientists all agreed that we had found an object that was flying through our solar system, and it was widely agreed that it was an interstellar comet that had swung out from around another star. But upon closer examination, they realized that something was propelling it and causing it to accelerate, and this is when the debate really started, because they just don't know why. A.V. Loeb, who's a Harvard University astrophysicist, proposed the idea that rather than a comet, this could be an alien probe that was being pushed by a light sail, which is a very wide but extremely thin piece of material that accelerates by being pushed by solar radiation. Other scientists didn't agree with this and instead said that it's possible that hydrogen ice could have melted off of the object in a way that would mimic a rocket engine or something of that nature, but in August of last year, Avi wrote in a study that hydrogen ice is too easily heated and it would have melted off long before it reached our solar system. I guess we just have to wait it out while the scientists debate and gather more evidence to really know what's going on with this one. In our number 1 spot today, we have the MV Joyita. Around 5 a.m. on October 3rd, 1955, the MV Joyita set sail in the South Pacific. The voyage was meant to take between 41 to 48 hours, but by October 6th, the ship hadn't turned up at its destination. No ship or land-based operator reported receiving any kind of distress call from the crew, so a search and rescue mission was immediately launched. From October 6th to October 12th, the search covered roughly 100,000 square miles, but alas, no one nor the ship were found. 5 weeks later, on November 10th, a captain of another ship spotted the Joyita more than 600 miles from her scheduled route. The ship was capsizing and listing heavily, but it was extremely buoyant and would not sink. Despite this, however, the crew of 25 members were completely missing, and they have never been seen again. 4 tons of cargo were missing from the ship, and the ship itself was in quite poor condition. The pipes were corroded, and while the radio worked, the wiring was faulty, so there was only a range of about 3.2 kilometers. Because of how the ship was built, investigators are puzzled as to why the crew didn't remain on the ship, as it wouldn't have sunk, but this has led them to believe that perhaps something happened to the captain, where he was killed or incapacitated, which would have left someone less experienced in charge. To this day, no one is quite sure what happened to those aboard the ship, how it capsized, or where they ended up. It is all very much a mystery.
Starting with number 10, ever heard of the phrase once in a blue moon? Well, there's a reason for that. Blue moons are actually fairly common and usually occur every 2 years. Full moons follow a 12-month cycle, though it takes around 29.5 for the cycle to complete, meaning the 12 full cycles occur every 354 days, 11 days short of a full year. So eventually an extra 13th moon occurs, known as the blue moon. But what's actually even more rare are 2 blue moons in 1 year. The last time this occurred was in 2018, and scientists anticipate that this will happen again in 2037. So keep a tally and make sure to catch all 14 that year. Number 9, the days will be longer. So I'm not just talking about the summer solstice here. Our days are actually going to get longer, albeit not by much, but still, ask any parent, an extra second before bedtime makes a huge difference. Every 100 years we gain around 1.7 milliseconds. The reason this happens is because of the ocean's tides generated by the gravity of the sun and the moon. As the moon slowly spirals away from Earth, it essentially takes the energy out of Earth's orbit, slowing it down. This is a very simplistic explanation, but essentially the whole thing can be blamed on the effects of gravity. But a lot of us who feel there are not enough hours in the day wish it was more, but still, our children, then our children's children, then our children's children just might get that wish. It is kind of crazy to think that this is happening slowly every day. Number 8, imagine being able to check your email, tweet, or post to Instagram all with the blink of an eye. It appears phone screens, or any screen for that matter, are determined to be so small they're almost invisible. If you're worried about your kids having too much screen time, well, keep an eye out for when smart contact lenses hit the playground. Samsung is determined to one-up the Google Lens, which was released in 2014, and they may be closer than you think. Researchers have inserted a light-emitting diode in a newly developed material that is a stretchy combination of graphene and silver nanowires that is not only transparent, but highly conductive. Beyond potentially using them to read emails, but then still finding an excuse not to reply right away, medically, these technical wonders could be really helpful. At the University of Illinois, researchers are currently using the graphene nanowire conductors to make biosensors to help monitor the overall health of the eyes. They're also being used to help filter light in specific ways to help a variety of vision problems. Coming in at number 7, AI robots. So if you watched my previous video about robots who will take over the world, then you know that AI robotics is making some serious strides. So it could be that by the time our children are grown up, that their best friend could be a robot. In fact, we are already in a stage of co-evolution. Sam Altman, who is president of the Y Combinator, says, and I quote, "Oh yeah, we're making robots that are way too smart. We're all doomed. We will be the first species ever to design our own descendants." Look, it is pure human arrogance if we don't think we will be able to build something that is smarter than us. It's gonna happen either way, by accident or on purpose. Most people believe that AI robots could create a form of subhuman either as early as 2025 or 2075. Neuroscientist and geostrategist Dr. Naif Al-Roden even said that it's only a matter of time before we create transhumans, improved versions of ourselves that could threaten their non-advanced selves, so they'll look to destroy them. Number 6, self-driving cars. Everyone knows how exciting it is to turn 16 and finally get behind the wheel of a car for the first time. legally. And every parent knows the feeling of having to lend your car out to someone who's only been driving for a year. Yay! But there is a possibility that in future, both these experiences could be eradicated with self-driving cars. Many high-tech companies like Tesla and Waymo boasted that millions of these vehicles would be on the roads by now, but that's not the case yet, because the cars rely on AI to work, and though we've made massive strides in that field, as I said, AI still can't improvise and solve real-world problems. In order to do this, the computers have to collect hundreds, thousands of hours of data of real people driving cars to get an understanding of how to navigate unpredictable situations. So it doesn't mean it's not gonna happen, but it's just going to take a little longer. Will it be just in time for your child's 16th birthday? Who knows? But scientists are definitely on the way. Number 5, lab-grown meat. Imagine digging into a juicy burger or pound after pound of spicy chicken wings with none of the guilt. Scientists are currently working on ethical lab-grown meat that will eradicate the need for slaughterhouses altogether. As our population approaches 10 billion people, feeding that many stomachs poses a massive challenge that we just won't have the space for. On top of the fact that going vegan or vegetarian isn't always accessible to some either by cost or lifestyle choice, meat is still a necessity. In fact, scientists expect the demand for meat to rise by 88% between now and 2050, which would mean we would need a pastoral land the size of India to cope. So what's the alternative solution? Stem cells! Yay! Scientists will take stem cells from a live animal and grow them in a nutrient-rich bioreactor with cell culture media. The biomass will then be separated into muscle and fat cells, then processed for final product. Our dinner! I know it sounds more chemical than appetizing, but these will be a healthy and cruelty-free option for so many who require meat for their diets. Personally, I'm 100% down. I'm in. It's cool. Chinook Meats is a company based in Singapore that is one example of a startup company who can grow seafood crustaceans 4 times faster than the traditional method. So if it ends up being even better, hell yeah. Number 4, communicating with the dead. Okay, did anyone else binge the show Upload on Amazon Prime or San Junipero? Let me know in the comments if you did. If you didn't, the show centers around the idea that people can upload their consciousness to an afterlife that can be interacted with by the living, which may be closer to reality than we thought. Ray Kurzweil, futurist and director at Google, thinks it is possible that we will be able to create a virtual reality where avatars of our deceased loved ones exist. They may even be so realistic that we could interact with them. He's experimenting by uploading photos and letters from his father, saying that the avatar he creates will know his father's entire past. Theoretically, not the same thing at all. And I wonder, could this cause more harm than good? I'm sure all of us have someone in our lives we wish we could speak with just one more time, but what happens if we can never let go? Now, before we review our top 3, remember to press that like button if you're excited to see what's next, and if you want more videos like this. All right, coming in at number 3, internet for everyone. You get internet, and you get internet, and hey, you over there, you get internet too. Yeah, imagine never having to run out of data while using Google Maps in a new city or out in the boonies somewhere. Well, Starlink hopes to make that happen, and maybe even as soon as the end of this year. Once again, we've got Elon Musk on our list because love him or hate him, wherever there are big ideas, Musk seems to be attached to them. Starlink is an internet service that hopes to bring high-speed, low-latency broadband internet globally. It's still in its beta stages, but as Starlink continues to launch satellites and ground stations, the service is only going to improve with maybe a few setbacks. Either way, whether it's Starlink or another competitor, our future generations may not know what it is like to stand on a chair holding her phone up to the air to just get Wi-Fi connection. Just like some kids already don't know what dial-up is. Number 2, we will have the ability to transfer thoughts telekinetically. Sounds far-fetched, doesn't it? But actually, it's already happened. According to an article in the Smithsonian Magazine in 2014, a recent telekinetic experiment had a person from India say hola and ciao to 3 other people in France. The remarkable accomplishment was a combined effort from Barcelona Research Institute Starlab, French firm Axiom Robotics, and Harvard Medical School. But don't worry, the purpose of this technology is not to hack our thoughts, but to allow people to communicate in limited situations for those who can't speak anymore or have sensory impairments. But we still have a long way to go. Though the experiment was successful, it's still a pretty complicated way to say hello. First, the team had to translate letters into a binary equivalent. Then the sender, with sensors attached to their head, had to move their hands to indicate the message. The receiver was then blindfolded and their head fixed to a transcranial magnetic stimulation, which is a non-invasive headset often used to treat depression. And the stimulation from the headset caused him to see flashes of light, kind of like Morse code, and from there it was translated into text. So, long process. The whole thing took a total of 70 seconds. Imagine if you lost the ability to speak or had to communicate silently over a long distance. Either way, it's easy to imagine that this technology might be perfected within our kids' lifetime. Hopefully, they've passed their teenage years because no parent wants to know what their kids are thinking at that age. And lastly, number 1, we might no longer be on Earth. Look, you could still tell your child that they can be whatever they want to be when they grow up, as long as astronaut is hyphenated, like actor, astronaut, doctor, astronaut, shoemaker, astronaut. The late Stephen Hawking wasn't alone when he made the prediction that in the next 100 years, due to climate change, humanity will have to leave Earth. If not climate change, then pandemics. I know, been there, done that, but likely to happen again. Population growth and even overdue asteroids give us good reasons to expand our living space. With the next moon landing testing our limitations for long-term habitation on the moon and $3 trillion being invested in the International Space Station, it is possible that our children or great-grandchildren will have to have a bag packed ready for space at any time.
Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have the New Jersey UFO. This UFO sighting took place in 2001 just above the New Jersey Turnpike. On July 14th, 2001, just after midnight for around 15 minutes, motorists driving down this highway stopped to stare at the sky to witness what no one could believe. There were strange orange and yellow lights in a V formation just above the Arthur Kill waterway. There were a ton of witnesses who were all extremely confused and shocked as to what they were seeing. Air traffic controllers initially denied that there were any flying objects that could have caused the mysterious lights, but a group that is called the New York Strange Phenomena Investigators claimed that they received radar data that night that would corroborate the story that the witnesses were telling. It may not have been aliens, but it certainly was some sort of unidentified flying object that no one had ever seen before, and there were people from all walks of life witnessing it together.
Coming in at number 9, if I were you, I'd get your camping gear ready. Write down a list of wishes and head out to the wilderness to witness the Perseid meteor shower set to occur on August 11th and 12th. They usually happen only once a year and is considered the meteor shower of the year. It is known as one of the most plentiful meteor showers, with over 50 to 100 meteor showers raining from the sky. That's potentially 100 wishes to make. Perseids are also known for creating fireballs, larger explosions of light that last longer than the average meteor. It should be viewable in Ontario and northern Quebec. So hopefully that works for you. The best viewing time is right before dawn, so stay up late or wake up early. Grab a cup of joe and a blanket and witness the magic. Coming in at number 8, if you think thunderstorms only happen on Earth, well, you're dead wrong, obviously. Considering the last 2 weeks have been rain city, thunderstorms feel a little too common right now. But this thunderstorm not only occurs on a different planet, there have only been 6 recorded since 1876. The Great White Thunderstorm on Saturn occurs 1 every 29.5 Earth years. They are massive convective storms that appear as giant white blobs on the planet's observable surface. The last recorded storm was in 2010, which means within our lifetime we should see another one around 2040-ish. Just enough time for you to get a big awesome telescope so you can catch the wondrous event in your very backyard. And coming in at number 7, volcanoes, aka the pimples of the Earth's crust, or at least that's how I see them. Volcanoes may look just like your average Himalayan mountains, but are actually slumbering giants of destruction. There are many across the planet that are overdue to pop, some having not been disturbed for thousands of years. However, scientists have a list of volcanoes they are carefully watching that they think might explode in our lifetime. One such volcano is Mount Shasta in California, which last erupted in 1786 and is considered one of the most dangerous volcanoes in the US. Mount Paektu in North Korea last erupted in 1903, and scientists also think it's almost ready, especially considering nuclear explosions nearby may have triggered it. Hopefully we don't experience these in our lifetime, but we better be ready if we do. Coming in at number 6, calling all Mark Twain fans. I know I reported this one on one of my previous videos, and apparently I said the name wrong. Sue me. I'm sorry, guys. I mean, I thought it was Holly's or Haley's. I don't know. To be fair, my roommates and I got into a fight about how it's pronounced, and even the internet is indecisive on how it's pronounced, so I'm gonna say it both ways. Anyways, Holly's comet became famous when Mark Twain tied his life and destiny to it, considering his life both began and ended in both the years it visited our lonely planet Earth. So this news is mostly for anyone born in 1986, as that was the last year Halley's comet was seen, and it's said to come back in 2061. Hopefully you don't pull a Mark Twain and you live longer than that, but be sure to mark it down anyways. Coming in at number 5, an Aquatic Rainfall. It's Raining Men by the aptly named Weather Girls is an iconic anthem and has the power to summon even the most deeply rooted wallflowers to the dance floor. Remember dances, guys? Those were fun. Anyways, but perhaps tadpoles or frogs might have been more accurate because though rare, it has been known to happen. Powerful thunderstorms, tornadoes, and waterspouts have powerful updrafts and can be known to sweep aquatic animals along with birds and insects up into the sky. But what goes up must come down, and one day you could be sitting down in a cafe and piles of frogs land on the canopy above you. Nobody knows when this is going to happen, and it doesn't always happen every time there's a thunderstorm. It's rare, which is why it's on this list. But the fact that it could happen anywhere means one day it might just happen to you. I honestly don't know which is more rare, raining frogs or being able to sit in a cafe. Coming in at number 4, this next one is definitely going to happen in our lifetime, as it's happening this very month. On May 26th, a total lunar eclipse is set to occur. A total lunar eclipse is when the closest and biggest full moon of the year will sweep through the Earth's dark umbral shadow. Total lunar eclipses like this one carry with them a wealth of lore and myths from around the world. The Mesopotamians believed that this was an attack on the moon by 7 demons. While today, the Batamalima people in Togo and Benin believe that this is a time for people to come together and resolve feuds and their anger. The last time an event like this occurred on a supermoon was 2.5 years ago, so make sure to make it count. Coming in at number 3, we have triple Jovian eclipse. Next up, we have not 1, not 2, but 3 eclipses, except it's not on the moon, it's on Jupiter. The triple Jovian eclipse is really rare and can be identified by 3 black dots lined up on the surface of Jupiter. The black dots are 3 Galilean moons, Io, Callisto, and Ganymede. Jupiter has 16 moons in total, and the 3 mentioned are among the biggest in its orbit. The last time this happened was in 2004. It was spotted by the Hubble Space Telescope, but because it moves so fast over Jupiter's surface, it's been difficult for researchers to capture the entire event. But as the next Jovian eclipse is set to happen in 2032, they hope they'll be able to capture it in more detail. Coming in at number 2, a total solar eclipse. Unfortunately, you can't look at this bad boy straight on, so get ready to get crafty. The next total solar eclipse is set to appear in 2045. They are super rare, and the last one happened in 2017. Imagine where you'll be in 2045 and make sure you've got some proper eyewear with you. A total solar eclipse is when the new moon passes between the sun and the earth and casts the darkest part of the shadow on the earth. It looks like a disc is blocking the sun, but if you look at it straight on, you may go blind, so don't do that. But if you can, find a way. During annular and partial eclipses, the moon is only blocking part of the sun, but during this one, the whole world is cast in darkness, like the shortest night. As for the specific date, we don't know yet, so make sure to set a reminder for your future self to keep an eye out. Or don't. Keep your eyes shut. Don't look at it. And last but not least, number 1. Now this last one is not a natural phenomenon, but one we've started to create, and just how rare it will be in the future all depends on how far we go. When humankind first landed on the moon, it made the stars above us seem that much closer. And they keep getting closer. It takes a lot for humans to go to space, and it feels like we've been waiting a while to go to the moon. Because we have. It has been over 50 years since astronauts last set foot on the moon. But guess what? The next one is sooner than you think. The Artemis program is set to put boots on the moon, hopefully by 2024, though some expect it may even be as early as 2022, next year. Considering the year we've had, it's a wonderful thing to look forward to. It will also be the first time a woman and a person of color has ever set foot on the moon. But this time, they aren't just going to visit, they plan to stay for a while. While Apollo 17 only spent 3 days, Artemis plans to extend the trip to weeks, even maybe months. In February 2020, NASA began rigorous tests on the spacecraft Orion, which is equipped with life support systems and shuttle interfaces. It will dock with the Lunar Gateway, which will serve as the astronauts' base when exploring the moon. If this all goes well, their next plan is to launch a team to Mars.
Starting off this list, in our number 10 spot, we have the Rhode Island vampire. Admittedly, witch and vampire hunts aren't exactly a topic covered in most history classes, but this is truly a pretty crazy story. In the late 1800s, tuberculosis was spreading pretty rapidly in Connecticut, Rhode Island, and Vermont. This obviously would have been pretty terrifying for the residents of these places, but things quickly took a very dark turn. Since many of the people who were passing away from this illness appeared very obviously ill with sunken, drained faces, for some reason, the logical response was that people believed that they had been the prey of vampires. There was a family in Exeter, Rhode Island that had multiple people pass away from the illness, so some people believed that someone in this family must be the feeding vampire. They even went as far as to exhume the bodies of some of the deceased family members to make sure that they weren't undead. One of the exhumed bodies had passed away more recently, so her body was in better condition, which people of course took as a sign of her being a vampire. This led to them burning her heart and liver, and then they mixed the ashes with water. This is most definitely a crime today and pretty scary, but to make things even worse, they gave this concoction to other people in the town who had fallen ill as some kind of a cure. Imagine having to drink that and then still having tuberculosis after. Definitely not a good trade-off. In our number 9 spot today, we have blood rain. Between July 25th and September 23rd of 2001, people in southern India were experiencing one of the most strange weather phenomena I've ever heard of. It is said that after a loud boom in the sky, rain started to fall in the region, but this rain was different from your average run-of-the-mill rain. This rain was blood red, with some reports saying that there was also black, green, and even yellow rain. Does this sound like something out of a science fiction movie? Yes. Is it cause for concern? Thankfully, likely not. There have been similar reports of rainfall like this from around the world, which doesn't necessarily make it feel any less unsettling, but scientists do know 2 reasons for how this happens. The raindrops are getting stained by one of 2 things, either dust from a nearby desert, or a form of microscopic algae that is suspended in the raindrops, causing the color change. You might be wondering where the whole mystery in this one is. Well, that lies in how we have absolutely no idea how algae is getting into the clouds and thus into our rain. A theory for this is that perhaps the algae is alien or extraterrestrial and has been hitching a ride on meteors entering our atmosphere, but because the DNA of the algae matches that of a type found in waters all over the world, scientists are skeptical of that idea, so it all remains very much an unsolved scientific mystery. In our number 8 spot today, we have the Taos Hum. In the small city of Taos, New Mexico, for years, residents and visitors alike have been puzzled by a mysterious sound in the air that no one can quite find the source of. It is said that only about 2% of residents reported hearing this low-frequency desert hum, and the theories as to what could be going on here truly are endless. They range from believing it's caused by some sort of unusual acoustics, all the way to mass hysteria and other far more sinister top-secret theories. Things are further confused by the fact that those who hear the sounds actually hear many different sounds, meaning that it might be more of a subjective experience rather than an objective sound. At this point, it is so unclear we may never truly get any kind of answer that we're looking for. In our number 7 spot today, we have Witchcraft. This story is one that is so strange and mysterious and unsettling that I haven't been able to stop thinking about it since the first time I heard it. On December 22nd, 1967, a cabin cruiser called Witchcraft left from Miami with 2 people on board. The 2 men were taking a trip so that they could enjoy the Christmas lights on a 23-foot luxury yacht, truly living the dream. That all changed very quickly, however, when the men were just 1 mile offshore and the Coast Guard received a call from the captain stating that they had struck something. He said that there was no substantial damage, but still, hitting something is usually not great. The Coast Guard set out immediately to help tow the ship back to shore, and it didn't even take 20 minutes for him to arrive, but when he got to the location, he couldn't spot the Witchcraft anywhere. The area that was indicated as the ship's location was completely deserted, and there was no indication that anyone had been there even recently. What is extra strange about this is that not only was the ship apparently virtually unsinkable, but there were also numerous flotation devices and life rafts, as well as emergency equipment like flares and distress signals. No one ever saw any sign of them being used, and the ship was just gone. Officials searched hundreds of square miles in the next few days, but no one has ever found any sign of the Witchcraft. I just don't know how they could be so close, the timing was so short, and they still just completely vanished. It honestly gives me goosebumps just thinking about it. In our number 6 spot today, we have ball lightning. This is a mystery that has been around for long before our lifetime, but it still happens today, and we just aren't exactly sure what to make of it or how it occurs. Ball lightning is basically like a glowing orb, a mysterious ball of light that glows and crackles and hovers there, and it usually appears during thunderstorms. These glowing balls have been seen by people in their homes, on airplanes. Apparently some people have even seen them passing through windows. Ball lightning is absolutely fascinating, but it has scientists stumped. They are the most mysterious weather phenomena on this planet. Ball lightning usually only appears for a few seconds, but here's the thing. It's impossible to predict when and where it'll show up. You don't choose ball lightning chooses you. It's quite rare, but people and scientists alike have experienced it. It has been attempted to be created in labs, but no one can figure out the exact formula that creates it, so I guess you just have to wait and see if you're one of the lucky ones. In our number 5 spot today we have the Summerton Man. The Summerton Man is an unidentified man who was found perished on the Summerton Park beach in South Australia in 1948. Since then his case, who he is, and what happened to him has been a mystery plaguing authorities and all those who are now invested in the case and its secrets. Public interest in the case arose in part due to how mysterious it was, but also because of the fact that the death occurred in a time of heightened international tension. The mysteries surrounding this one span more than just who this man was, however. Firstly, it is unclear how this man passed away. Was it some sort of undetectable poison? How could no one have any idea despite being able to examine the body? The next mystery is that a secret little note was found in his pocket that was torn from a book. The note in his pocket read "To Mom Should," which means is over or is finished. It's a little ominous, but is the note connected to the case or is it just a weird coincidence? We don't know. Earlier this year, the body of the Summerton Man was actually exhumed in order for DNA testing to be done, as we of course have much more technology and DNA databases than we did at the time of his burial. While we haven't had any updates yet, maybe this exhumation means that this one isn't impossible to solve? I guess we'll all just have to wait and see. In our number 4 spot today we have the Catatumbo Lightning. Okay, so basically the opposite of ball lightning, the elusive glowing orbs, we have this kind of lightning that is around almost too often. Basically this lightning occurs over the Catatumbo River and it's a complete atmospheric phenomenon. This lightning occurs 140 to 160 nights a year, 9 hours per day, and from 16 to 40 times per minute. That is absolutely insane. That is so much lightning. That's almost a lightning strike a second. Another thing that's so fascinating about this lightning is that it is colorful and it doesn't produce any thunder. The lightning does change its frequency up from time to time, and at one point it stopped for a few weeks and people thought that maybe it was going to have been exhausted forever, but that changed when the lightning came back, putting it right back on our list of mysteries that we just can't quite figure out. Many people have studied the lightning, trying to figure out exactly how it has been created and what makes this phenomena what it is, but we aren't just quite sure yet. In our number 3 spot today we have the Zodiac Killer. This one had to make it on this list because although these stories are terrifying and horrible, the story of the uncaught and unidentified serial killer known as the Zodiac truly is one of the most mysterious. The Zodiac Killer took the lives of 5 people in the San Francisco Bay Area between December 1968 and October of 1969. He was most known for targeting young couples or a lone male cab driver. Despite 2 people luckily and thankfully escaping his attempted evil doings, he has still never been caught. He was one of those weird ones who left notes and stuff for the police to find, and there are of course many people who think that the Zodiac has been identified. I'm sure we'll see some of them in the comments, hi. But while no one has heard from the Zodiac since 1974, the case remains active in many different counties and it is yet to be officially solved. In our number 2 spot today we have D.B. Cooper. This is a case I have mentioned here before on this channel. In fact, I talked about this guy in my very first video I ever did here, but we had to bring it back because it truly is one of the most baffling mysteries of our lifetime. On November 24th, 1971, a man who said his name was Dan Cooper boarded a flight from Portland to Seattle. Once the plane was in the air, Cooper handed a note to the flight attendant who dropped it into her purse without even opening it. Cooper leaned over and whispered, "Miss, you'd better look at that note. I have a bomb," which is probably number 1 on the list of the top 10 things no flight attendant ever wants to hear. After showing her the bomb, he began to list his demands, which were $200,000, 4 parachutes, and a fuel truck standing by in Seattle to refuel the plane for when they arrived. At 5:39 p.m., the aircraft landed at Seattle-Tacoma Airport. After receiving the items he had requested, Cooper ordered all the passengers and some of the flight attendants to leave the plane. The plane then took off again, and when it landed in Reno, Nevada, Cooper wasn't on it. The search for Cooper was one of the most extensive in US history, but he has never been located, and no one knows who he really was or what happened to him after this whole ordeal. Maybe DB knew something we all don't and he vanished into another universe? If so, why did he have to hijack a plane to do so? It truly is one of our biggest mysteries that may never get solved. In our number 1 spot today, we have the USS Princeton UFO. This is a UFO sighting that comes from 2004. On November 14th of that year, the USS Princeton noticed an unknown aircraft of some sort that was about 100 miles off of the coast of San Diego. For 2 weeks prior to this, the crew had been tracking a strange flying object that would start out at around 80,000 feet before extremely quickly dropping to hover right above the Pacific Ocean. Black Aces Commander David Fravor and Lieutenant Commander Jim Slate of Strike Fighter Squadron 41 went over in 2 fighter jets in order to kind of scope out the situation, and when they arrived they saw what at first appeared to be churning water while there was an oval shape just below the surface. After this, a white oval shaped object appeared above the water, but it had no markings on it. Like no windows, nothing that would indicate an engine, no wings, and the infrared monitors on the jets didn't pick up any sort of exhaust. The commander and lieutenant commander tried to intercept this strange aircraft, but it very quickly flew away and it reappeared on the monitor 60 miles away. Like when I say quickly, I mean it was moving at 3 times the speed of sound and over twice the speed of fighter jets. So faster than any kind of technology we currently have. We still don't know exactly what this is, but I'm sure a lot of us are thinking the same thing.
Kicking off the list at number 10, blindfolded gladiators. Remember that last scene in the movie Dodgeball when Vince Vaughn has to blindfold himself and then he still somehow wins? What a moment in time, no dry eyes in the theater at all. Amazing. But what if I told you gladiators would also pull the same trick off? Yeah, in order to get crowds to return to these massive events back in the day, they would need to change the formula up from time to time. They would have cheap beer nights at the Coliseum, which helped, but a new idea that worked was referred to as andabata. And that's when gladiators wore blindfolds during combat. How insane does that sound? Are you kidding me? I'd go and watch, probably, I don't know. They would also leave the armor inside. They would mostly battle in just sandals and cloth. Yeah, and you thought Marco Polo made you anxious? Try again. They would save these events for criminals, I guess, but like, come on, stealing bread and then fighting a tiger? The Coliseum was a little unfair, gotta admit.
In our number 9 spot today, we have India in World War II. It would be shocking to hear of a school not teaching anything about World War II, but it's often that we don't truly get the full scope of what went on. One thing I saw brought up a few times was the role that India played in the war and what they went through. Firstly, if you didn't know, India played a huge part in the Second World War. We normally hear of the large death tolls from the war, such as the 418,000 Americans who died, or the 450,000 people from the UK, which, don't get me wrong, is a huge and terrible number. But it is estimated that 3 million Indian people died in World War II, which is something I have literally never heard of anyone talk about before. India was fighting Japan, which for the record also had an extremely high death toll in this war, on the Eastern Front, and they were fighting Germany on the Western. World War II is a part of our global history, so why don't we talk about it and how it affected all of the countries? In our number 8 spot today, we have the Acadian Expulsion. Before I dive into this one, guys, please don't forget to hit the thumbs up button if you're enjoying the video so far. This is something that happened in my own country, you guys, and I can honestly say this was never taught at the schools I attended. The Acadians were descendants of the 17th and 18th century French settlers who settled in the area that is now the Canadian Maritimes, so New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, and Prince Edward Island. In 1730, Acadians had to swear to British authorities that they would remain neutral on any conflict between Britain and France. Basically, one thing led to another, and the governor of Nova Scotia at the time, Charles Lawrence, saw the Acadians as some kind of a threat, and he also wondered why people who weren't from the area were allowed to live on such a beautiful part of the land. Well, isn't that real rich coming from someone who also wasn't from the area? But that is a whole separate conversation. Charles tried to force the Acadians to take an unqualified oath of allegiance to Britain, and when they refused, he imprisoned them and then ordered them to be deported. A man from New England called Charles Morris came up with the disgusting idea to surround the Acadian churches on a Sunday morning and capture as many people as possible while also burning their houses and crops. This whole situation led to approximately 10,000 Acadians being deported, and apparently this whole ordeal had a fatality rate of 53% for the Acadians. This whole thing is honestly pretty disgraceful, and it's just something that we don't talk about. In our number 7 spot today, we have the Iranian Revolution of 1979. On August 19th, 1978, at the Cinema Rex in Abadan, Iran, there were hundreds of people watching a film when 4 men barricaded the doors, doused the cinema in gasoline, and lit the whole thing ablaze. This was a key event that led to the following revolution of 1979, but it truthfully had been building for quite some time, and this obviously wasn't the only event that led to this movement. This revolution was unique in the fact that it lacked a lot of the usual causes, such as a defeat in war, or a gigantic national debt, or an uprising of those in poverty. There is a lot that happened and a lot that went into this revolution, and I truly do not have time to cover in this video even half of it. But this revolution not only toppled Iran's absolute monarch, but it had worldwide political repercussions that are still seen today. In our number 6 spot today, we have Cyrus the Great. It is entirely possible that you may have learned about Cyrus the Great in school, as he was the founder of the Achaemenid Empire, but there is one thing he did that apparently a lot of us didn't know that possibly changed the course of our history. After he took Babylon over, he freed all of the captured slaves in the city and let them go back to their homelands. This included the Hebrews who were captured and enslaved from Judea. This may seem like a nice and reasonable thing to do, but it truly was more than that. By allowing these people to be free and return to their homes and continue practicing their religions, this may have been what has kept some religions alive. Without this move, it is possible that we may not have Judaism, Christianity, or Islam today, and that would have made our entire history very, very different. In our number 5 spot today, we have the Italian Renaissance dark side. When we think of the Italian Renaissance period, it is known for development and the rebirth that it caused, which makes a lot of sense considering the word Renaissance literally means rebirth. But there is one less glamorous and slightly frightening side to this period that isn't widely talked about. Sailors who had been returning from the New World at this point brought something less than lovely back with them, and that was syphilis, which spread through an entire French army. After this, the troops brought what was called the Great Pox to the rest of Europe. Since there was no penicillin or banana medicine back then, the disease spread rapidly and the symptoms were pretty gruesome. It would often happen that a person who had fallen ill would have the skin on their faces essentially be rotting away, which would leave large ulcers. Some people's noses and lips would be pretty much gone, and it happened often that people would sadly pass away from the disease. So basically what we think of as a beautiful time in Europe was both world-changing, but also very scary, and pretty close to a zombie apocalypse. In our number 4 spot today, we have the history of dentures. I suppose this one is less of an event and more of a weird practice, but I just had to include it. I don't have a ton of experience with dentures, but they seem to be a pretty straightforward thing these days, aside from the cost of dental, but things weren't always the way they are today. Instead of dentures being made of fake teeth, before they used to be made with real human teeth, which is absolutely disgusting to me. After the Battle of Waterloo, scavengers went and took the teeth off of the corpses, which is quite a job, and then they sold these teeth to dentists. These dentists would boil the teeth, chop the roots off, and then attach these teeth to ivory base plates and then sell them to the customers. Aside from this being an extremely morally questionable practice in its entirety, it is also just so creepy. In our number 3 spot today, we have telephone cats. If you're a cat person, you might want to skip over this number. In 1929, 2 scientists at Princeton University wanted to conduct an experiment in order to test how auditory nerves perceive sounds. This is obviously extremely important research, but the way they went about this is truly messed up. They took a sedated but alive cat and cut out a part of its brain. They then attached one end of a telephone wire to the cat's auditory nerve and then the other end to a telephone receiver. When one of these scientists spoke into the cat's ear, the other one could hear it on the other end.
This is cool, but most definitely not an excuse to do something so inhumane. There were of course benefits to this experiment, and it is believed that this may have helped lead to the development of cochlear implants, which is of course an incredibly important scientific advancement. The worst part, however, while the cat actually survived this experiment, instead of treating it like a king for the rest of its life like it truly deserved, these scientists instead decided to kill it to see if the experiment would still work on a dead cat. It didn't. In our number 2 spot today, we have the smallpox pandemic. I'm sure at some point or another, most of us learned about smallpox and the epidemic, which is something that we luckily don't really have to worry about much anymore. But one thing a lot of people explained that they didn't know was how badly it devastated indigenous peoples. Europeans who came over to America brought with them a multitude of diseases that they would have had some immunity to, considering it was likely their bodies had encountered it before. But this was not the case for those already living on the land that is now referred to as North America. Indigenous Americans not only had no immunity towards this disease, but also their traditional ways of treating illness may have only exacerbated the symptoms. Because of course, how could you possibly know how to treat something that you've never seen before and with no help from the people who actually do know? It has been estimated that the spread of this disease caused the population of Indigenous Americans to decline by 70%. That is absolutely insane. There's a theory that this spread of disease may have been one of the only things that led to the colonization of North America. In our number 1 spot today, we have the Tulsa Massacre. This is one that many people, including people from Tulsa, explained that they didn't really learn much about in school. This event occurred on May 31st and June 1st of 1921, and it has actually been called the single worst incident of racial violence in American history. This happened in the Greenwood district of Tulsa, Oklahoma, and basically just mobs of white racist people went out and attacked black residents and businesses. What started this was when a 19-year-old black man named Dick Rowland was accused of harming a 17-year-old white girl, and he was subsequently arrested, and there were rumors that he was going to be lynched. This of course drew a bunch of racist white people out of their homes to participate, but then a group of around 75 black men also showed up to make sure that he didn't get lynched. One thing led to another, and a firefight broke out that led to 10 of the white people and 2 of the black people being killed. After this, all hell broke loose. Just last year, the last living survivor of the massacre, R&B and jazz saxophonist Hal Singer, passed away at the age of 100. And just last year, this massacre finally became a part of the Oklahoma State curriculum, and it's about time. Only a century too late. I also feel like in that I didn't include, but I should have said, that thing after the lynching was like only the beginning of it, and then everything got crazy and way more people died, and it was really destructive. I just didn't want anyone to think that I was making it seem like it wasn't as bad as it was, because it really was.
Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have the Jian Sen. In 2006, the Australian Coast Watch found a ship floating out at sea that was completely empty with a broken tow rope. Finding a ship floating with no one aboard is always a strange kind of mystery, but things only got more mysterious from there on out. Investigators had absolutely nothing to go off of that could give them any kind of clues. The name of the ship was printed on the side, but that's it. There was nothing else to identify the ship. There were no documents or belongings, no reports of missing boats, no records of distress signals, like literally nothing. They can't even figure out who it belonged to or where it came from. Their best guess is that the ship was possibly used to supply food and fuel to fishing boats, but that does not explain why no one tried to save it or even look for it. Was there someone on it when it got lost? Who knows?
Number 9, Elmer McCurdy. This one is insane, I had to throw it in here. Elmer McCurdy, back in 1911, so a bit more recent than the Coliseum days, he decided to be a rootin' tootin' criminal, and he attempted to rob a train. Unbeknownst to him, that train was not full of gold, but rather it was full of passengers. So he collected a whopping $46 instead. Instead of a gold heist, he got $46, which back in the day was still not bad, I'm not gonna lie. Things were going fine until he was shot by a lawman. Now this is when things start to get really insane insane. Elmer's body was embalmed and then sold by the Undertaker to this traveling carnival. His body was an exhibit almost, and for the next 60 years, his body was passed around as a prop. It was sold between haunted houses, wax museums, that kind of stuff. Check out this guy who tried to do this and blah blah blah. Such as I'm doing now, but I would have his body here. I don't know, people are weird. Eventually, the guy's body, like his real body, don't forget, ended up in California at an amusement park funhouse at Long Beach. Come 1976, there's a crew there filming the movie The $6 Million Man, and that's when Elmer's finger broke off, revealing that it was an actual mummy and not a prop on the set. They went to film The $6 Million Man and ended up finding the $46 man in real life. That is so gross. Imagine that. Some guy with a boom mic's like, Number 8. Fake France. Towards the end of World War I, Paris was tired of seeing, things that they love get blown to smithereens, more than fair. So they figured, let's try and fool the Germans flying overhead. Let's just build a fake Paris. Yeah, a fake Paris. Let's psych them out. They created a decoy, a very large decoy. This life-size stunt double was posted up only a few miles west of the actual city in order to protect it. And it worked. This tiny town called Masons Lafitte, now of course it's looking a lot more full. Now it's like a rich town, not fake buildings, but actual real buildings where rich people live. That's fun. There were 3 different zones set up just in case anything were to drop around the real Paris. Zone A was northeast of the city, had fake train stations and mimicked a suburban region of St. Denis, but it had a big fake Gare du Nord train station. That was the whole pull over there. Zone B, northwest of the city, that was Masons Lafitte, the main fake Paris city I just talked about. And Zone C was the industrial area. So basically it was just east of the city and they had a massive factory built with literally nothing inside of it. Just a big shell. This sounds a lot like Home Alone, just on a larger scale when you think about it. But with these missions only happening overnight back then, creating a light show with some big props wasn't a bad idea. Lights were carefully spaced out on the ground so it looked like a breathing city from above. Check it out. They Looney Tuned the Germans, and it worked. How amazing is that? Number 7, Mad Jack. During World War II, you needed all the power you could get, but one man, Lieutenant Colonel Jack Churchill, aka Mad Jack, great nickname, he had a different mindset when it came to battle and weaponry. He believed that any British soldier going into battle without a sword was improperly dressed. Also, fun fact about Mad Jack here, he represented Great Britain in the World Archery Championships. So not only did he have a sword, but he also went into battle with a longbow. Yeah, like an Avenger. History has acknowledged Mad Jack as the last man to officially take out an enemy in combat by using a longbow, which is pretty cool. But here's the most intimidating part about him. Before combat, Mad Jack would play the bagpipes, right before drawing his sword and then running at you in battle. Can you imagine? That's some Game of Thrones stuff. A dude ripping the bagpipes, dropping it, and then sprinting at you full on with a sword and a longbow? Good game. I would just fold. I'd throw my on the ground. I'd be like, nope, you win. Take it. Take all the land. Number 6, Ball the Burning Men. If you're gonna party like it's 1999, at least do so safely, Back in 1393 in Paris, these knights would put on these fun party performances for the king. They would dress up and pretend that they were wild beasts. They would soak their armor with shrubbery and dry grass and hay. They would stuff it, anything to make them look like, I don't know, a hairy beast almost. Which first of all, great bit. Pretty itchy, honestly, great commitment. The party was going well and they planned for these wacky performances, so they had to ban candles and torches from this room. The king's brother, he was drunk, maybe he was, at a festival of drunkenness prior, I don't know. He walked in with a torch and all hell broke loose. He got too close to one of these knights, one of these stuffed knights, and well, he caught on fire and yeah, you could probably figure out the rest. It was bad news. Number 5, coffee ban. This is the worst of the worst right here, halfway, let's do it. Murad IV, Sultan of the Ottoman Empire. This guy banned coffee. Yeah, what an absolute monster. He was born in 1612 and for the most part his mother was ruling through him because, he was so young and all. But when he got a little older, he put forth these laws just because he could. And he made these laws punishable by death, so he wasn't playing around. Yeah, this guy banned coffee, tobacco, and alcohol. What a party pooper. He would take this so seriously as well, he would actually disguise himself as a civilian at nighttime and then wander around the streets aimlessly in hopes that he would catch one of these dark roast renegades. If you were caught outside having a quick smoke break, you weren't arrested, you weren't charged or anything like that, but rather Murad IV himself would just take off your head right there in the streets. No trial, no jury, just straight to execution. How horrible is that? No coffee? Could you imagine getting your head because you had a coffee? Get out of here. Number 4, Royal Curse. The remains of Polish queens and kings were discovered back in April 1931 in a crypt in Vilnius. Polish researchers didn't even know what they were in for. A storm had flooded a cathedral in Vilnius and they threw down sandbags to preserve the area. God forbid it flooded, obviously. But on the night of April 25th, they had followed the water into this lost chamber that held the remains of Polish kings and queens. No one has found them at any point before. These remains were still buried with the crown. It was like a whole scene untouched. It was from the 15th century. What a find, right? Sadly, the flood ended up ruining all of these remains, and this is when things start to get a little mysterious. All those involved in these findings began to die in unusual circumstances afterwards. One professor had died after falling down a lift shaft in his apartment. Another guy died before him as well due to undisclosed medical issues, but apparently it was sketchy or not supposed to happen. Another professor, years later, who worked in the crypt as well, became paralyzed randomly at 62. A sculptor, also involved, died when untying his shoelace, so a freak accident. And another professor died in 1936 shortly after visiting the crypt again. I hope this isn't an ancient curse because these guys were legitimately trying to preserve history and avoid the crypt flooding. We need a Ouija board to clear this whole situation up. We need one guy to be like, hey, by the way, just explain everything. Number 3, the Festival of Drunkenness. Wait, is this an actual thing? Hold on. Nowadays we have parties for just about everything. There's a baby on the way, let's party. Baby just came out, let's party. Baby turned 1, now we gotta party at like 11 a.m. We just love celebrating. We'll find excuses to celebrate. Well, the Festival of Drunkenness in Egypt back in the 15th century they got right to the point. Just drink your faces off. That's it. This religious event, and yeah, you heard me, religious event, was to celebrate the Egyptian sun god Ra. And the story goes as such. Ra stopped the end of the world way back in the day when Hathor was planning on devouring all of life. So Ra successfully thwarted their plan by getting them drunk off 7,000 jars of beer. That's a lot of IPAs, oh my. The beer was dyed red to look like blood. Hashtag pranked ya. So now the god was so drunk that it couldn't, devour everybody. So ancient Egyptians would honor this, again, religious event by getting absolutely plastered. If you didn't pass out, that was considered offensive, like not burping after a meal. Also, drink responsibly. Number 2, Caesar and Caligula. Running the clock back to 12 CE, Gaius Caesar, aka Caligula, aka the Roman emperor at the time, apparently he was close with his horse. I had 2 dogs growing up. I would ride or die for those little piggies, okay? I get it. I'm an animal lover myself. And if I had the money, yeah, I would probably make them a house, just for them to run around with and all that jazz. Well, he gave his horse a marble stall, and it got to the point where they were so close, Caligula was about to appoint the horse to high office of council, but he was taken out. Imagine if he had lived and this happened. What would those meetings look like? What would they smell like, rather? I don't want to know. Let's move on. And finally, coming in number 1, Adrian Carton de Wyatt. Over the course of 6 decades and 4 wars, Lieutenant General Adrian Carton de Wyatt survived the impossible multiple times. He's considered one of the most dedicated soldiers of all time because, well, for starters, after he lost his left hand and his left eye, Adrian did not retire. In fact, the British Army officer went on to experience 10 more horrible injuries. As World War I broke out in November 1914, Carton was serving and he was opposing the forces of the Dervish state. In doing so, he was shot in the arm and face, that's how he lost his left eye. But a grim detail shared by Lord Ismay, who served alongside the soldier, said in 1964 that the doctor at the time couldn't do anything, not a single thing, about his eye. So he must have been in pure agony the entire time. Literally, he must have been just the worst pain. Lord Ismay continues to believe that losing his eye was actually a blessing in disguise, because the incident allowed for Adrian to relocate to Europe, where even more action was waiting for him. Once stationed in Europe, Adrian received wounds to the head, hand, stomach, groin, leg, ankle, all by bullets, all a bad time. And if that's not inspiring enough, he survived numerous plane crashes and a broken back afterwards. If you feel like reading more incredible details about the soldier and the diplomat, there's a book on his whole life. And yeah, it's more interesting than I just made it sound.